So I'm going to talk to you today about recent art in prisons and recovery settings from a more scholarly and pedagogy perspective, working very much with students as co-producers and also clients and community. So I'm Alice Bell, Associate Professor, Fine Art Programme Leader, for those of you that I've not met yet. So within the context of these settings, art practice is very complex, and they're very complex social systems, as it's come up through many of the talks that we've had today. And the practice that I've done at Lincoln for about 8 years, but has been going on for 10 years within fine art, is at that intersection of participatory pedagogies, recovery, rehabilitation, and socially engaged art settings. And our long-term partnership, and for those of you that are Lincoln-based and bound, is with Lincolnshire Recovery Partnership, that in the last 8 years has gone through those various name iterations. So you may recognise it as something else. This year we extended it to Her Majesty's Prison Service Moulton Hall, which again, for those of you at the local, is just out in Swindby. It's an interesting train journey for our students, so I'll come to that soon. And then also what's kind of sprung from this module, which has been really curious and interesting, that there's also been the other ability to not work at one of those participatory settings in a very participatory hands-on way, but to remain mostly in the studio setting and under the tutelage of Steve, work more thinking about the aesthetics of spaces, very much sort of extending from his mural project and investigating those settings. But what was really curious and challenging, so I've gone from like having 8 students, which I can lovely kind of manage in one setting, to 24 all over the place. And as you can imagine, managing the ethics and logistics of that's been quite full on. But some of our students have already this year begun to generate their own sort of hybrid model of wanting to do some participatory arts, but also wanting to have the safety of the studio practice. So all those sort of concerns around whose artwork is it? Is a participatory collab artwork? Is it an aesthetic piece that's been done inspired by that? Have kind of blurred in certain settings. So I'll show you those. So this is just one of the jolly photos outside what was Double Impact. That's actually where Lincolnshire Partnership Foundation Trust is based. It's opposite the scene for any of you that go night clubbing, or the Alive Church. If any of you go to the Alive Church or to the lovely cafe, that is where Lincolnshire Recovery is based. So that's just some images there of some of the students that we've worked with over the years, and also some of the client participants, artists. So I think we've all spoken today about why this work matters, and in these very recent mainstream palatable publications, the Guardian article recently and the Daisy Fancourt book that's just come out on how arts heal, I think is really positive and really curious in sort of valuing the arts within our culture and society in a way that perhaps as academics we're experiencing the arts being denigrated and withdrawn and funding reduced. So I think there is a general move, as we've all can see, between the arts and sciences coming together to work together, whether we're talking about quantitative data or qualitative data, and how we kind of capture the findings that we find through doing the work that we do. So it is being noticed. So yeah, I don't need to read the slide out. You'll have had time to read that while I was talking. And I think again, in terms of Rob's talk about the mandalas and the themes that come out, and again, what we've just heard from Ananda's Chas's project, very much the way of sort of measuring or extracting feelings in a very nuanced way that isn't on a scale of 1 to 10, but that has difference for everywhere. And actually what's interesting, in the 8 years at Lincolnshire Recovery Partnership, they do check in on 1 to 10, but 1 to 10 can mean brilliant for one person and the opposite for the other. So there's no actual definition of the scale, it's just the number. I usually check in saying, if you were a fruit, what would you be today? And generally I'm an apple, but yeah, it does vary. So how do you measure that? You know, how many apples in the room, etc. So yeah, arts practice, as we all know, especially colleagues that are speaking from the arts, can create spaces for reflection, belonging, and transformation within systems that are often defined by control and exclusion, and even the university as itself, as we know, can operate in these systems. So we're always challenging within the system how to look at things differently and inclusively. The first thing that Rob just asked about, what happened to the words on the bowl, that's not the words on the poems and the letters, that's not an excellent example, but I wanted to show you this slide because when we're preparing our students to come onto this module, I say to them, write down or create a story, painful experience, something that you feel that you can kind of sit with and is comfortable enough to work with yourself, and then transmute that into a bowl so it becomes something useful. So the problem becomes a solution. So they'll end up putting their keys in it or whatever. So just to give them an initial sense of maybe from a lived experience point of view, how it feels to perhaps work with something that feels manageable for them in that moment to transmute. And it comes from a lot of work done by our psychotherapist Sean McNiff, who's also a professor in Lesley University in the States, about sort of using the art as a medicinal vessel to transform. So all the students have a go at doing that before they come on. And then this year, those are some slides really just of how we've changed the module to sort of really bring in partners in the real world, because they're grateful that we're going out to them, because prison art budget has just been cut, for example. Swallow Lodge throughout the process. The commissioner at the council told them on a Thursday that we're shutting down the following Friday, and all the care would go into private homes for the respite care that they're offering for carers. So all this, the students are working really within the kind of stress and context of real world policy change happenings, and they have a bit of a wobble and panic, like, how am I going to get my module guide in when my client's this and that? And it's like we're saying to them, well, this is the real world, this is how it works, this is real employability skills. So it was really nice that of their own back, with no payment, we can see there the prison coming in and doing some clinical training, trauma-informed practices with the students. Bottom, a Lincolnshire Recovery Partnership on relapse, lapse, addiction, deep listening, etc. Ways of holding. And then on the right hand side we have Swallow Lodge, which are part of Making Space, the respite care home up in Highcombe that some of our students also gravitated towards as part of, you can see their STEEPS briefing on a lecture with them on times at the brief. So these were the three kind of groups kind of going on within the space. So principles of the practice that we do in this module is about participant-led learning, about non-hierarchical environments. So the circle rings very true in terms of everyone sharing at an equal level, listening to each other's story. Creative is reflection and communication. We're rebuilding identity through making and storytelling, but how collaborative making can support trust, belonging, agency, and visibility of those involved. And that goes all ways. So as I said, Lincolnshire Recovery Partnership, long-term relationship. Here's some images of our students working at Lincolnshire Recovery Partnership in the setting in a very much a way that we perhaps start with some sort of activity in the early weeks, and then we very much, the students partner with the clients to work with what they need to bring into the world, and you can see, but because they're also working with students that are fine artists, we've got the aesthetic and the intellectual and the creative kind of contemporary emphasis coming through. So it's not like in a very derogatory way just going and doing some colouring in. It's about really working with the clients to bring out what they need to say and show in the world. That's what it has been. It's interesting there's a chap there, Josh, on the end, who's on our current foundation course, but I will talk about that more later. So this is an example of it really. So it's about bringing some of our tools and kits and stuff we've got in Lincoln to enable. So we will bring over a Let's Cast Your Hand in Latex, and this is a particular piece that was called The Lady Takes the Drink, then the Drink Takes the Lady, which was in the last show. And there's I don't know if the slides are shared, but there's a really lovely link there to a video which gives you the perspectives of the clients, the students, and the centre. So this year, as I said, we really deepened the practice by working at Morton Hall. Now, for context, many of you probably know Morton Hall, but it's a a prison, category C prison, which is one below the lightest prison, if you can call it that, open prison. It's a deportation centre, it has been. It's all male foreign nationals. And if you can imagine, I have got generally, to generalise, sort of 20 to 25-year-old female fine art students. So for me, I was like, whoa, I don't know if I at 20 would be confident or comfortable enough to sort of walk into a male prison. This module changes me each year as well. Learned loads, and we'll come back to that in a moment. So these are the students walking from the train station to the prison. So that was also quite hilarious and a massive challenge to get them on a train every week and walking up the farm track, which was about a 20-minute walk to the prison. But they did it, and that's them arriving. And for those of you that may have worked in prisons will know, and I had never, so all the sort of chains and gates and handing everything in takes ages. It takes a good 25 minutes to get in each time. That, for me, I don't know quite how to explain, is a little sketch I did actually, because what was a learning thing for me, when you're in the prison, you are not allowed to take anything with you. And for those of you that know me, I'm a ridiculously stupid multitasker. So I can't sit there for 2 hours and do some laptop thing. I can't. And I was like, I couldn't take any photos inside the building. So in the end, I thought, oh, maybe I just start drawing. And I never draw anymore. I make films and stuff. And so I just sat and quietly drew 3 of the prisoners. And I thought, and it was just really nice, actually. So this is also an example of how things sort of heal and work and transform each way. So that was in the final exhibition. So as was the work of these 3 young men, who are all, again, about 20 to 30. So again, that's quite full on, because you're like, it could be anybody, it could be my sons, it could, you know, it's like stupid little things that happen that mean they're in there. Great people doing their work. This is one of the artworks that was made in collaboration between one of our students and a chap called Bart. The prisoners have many additional sort of complexities, needs. Bart was very fidgety. He wanted to be called Bart Simpson. He was neurodivergent, what he wanted to do. He worked in the gym. He wanted to make a sign for his gym in the prison. And what was curious for me as an academic was that rather than going into Lincolnshire Recovery Partnership with loads of goodies and enabling the clients to produce what they wanted to do, the prison were more wanting the prisoners to create something that would go back in the prison and that could be more intersectionally speak to everybody after the life of the prisoner or the artist. So that was really interesting. So this in the end was the sign, and again the student who made it with the prisoner had all the battles of the gym staff not wanting the original slogan, and then the prisoner being Bart being upset because his words weren't there, and how we got all around of that. So in the end this was settled on. It was shown in our gallery, and now it's gone back and is installed in the gym in the prison, and the gym is painted white and black, half and half, and Bart hates this. So it was a sort of a statement about black and whiteness, yeah, and about the in-between. Am I running out of time, Jack?
You're the last presenter, so.
I know, okay.
You're the one with the train to catch.
I have got the train to catch, yeah. So just quickly, I don't think there's that many more. So this was a really lovely thing that happened throughout the 12 weeks. Lovely and complicated in another way, but I kind of quite like complication until I'm like, I can't carry all this. But these are some of our students at Making Space, which, as I said, is a respite care home in Highcombe. So it's where families, they have regulars who come with them to stay with them for a night, just to give families some respite. So again, interesting about the caring for the carers kind of notion that Rob was talking about earlier. And the students loved this because it wasn't going to a prison and it wasn't going to hang out with addicts, which are the two sort of dichotomies that they have that can frighten some of them and melt within the first section, but can prevent some students going. But this felt safer for them because it's working with people with kind of severe difficulties, but not deemed at risk as such in that sort of Daily Mail way of being a prisoner or an addict. They produced 4 Yeah, 3 mural panels, and those are just the ones that were in the exhibition, but they are to go down this corridor here. But this was the place that sort of rang me on a Friday night going, we've had some terrible news, can the university help? I'm like, I'm not that powerful, you know. No. But yeah, but the council has said, you know, we're closing you down a week later. So they were all really upset about that. So that's a real thing. But they've managed to lobby and get another 7 months. But just testimony to the awful commissioning situation that a lot of these charities operate within. This is just a close-up of the 4 seasons that they are going to do. So the students are going to go back and put those murals on the wall regardless, despite the uncertainty now of the location. Okay, so winding down, another couple of students of their own volition went and worked with the framework hostel at Sinsel House. A student had a dad who ran it, and she went in and did her own participatory workshops based on some of the sort of methods and theory we learned in the morning. And another student also with the anorexia clinic as part of the Lincolnshire Mental Health. So this was the type of spaces that they were working with when they were responding in the homeless hostel and the anorexic clinic. This is not the artwork that was made for the hostel, but this is an example of how one of our students wanted to create a more teenage friendly or young persons friendly mural for an LGBTQ plus waiting room, rather than having little toys and squiggly things in a doctor's room to play with. So I just wanted to throw that in there as well to show you how the inspiration they were getting from sort of Steve in terms of the mural stuff was also bleeding into sort of participatory real life stuff. This was the final exhibition, so all the artworks came in together at the end, culminating in an exhibition in our gallery, and it was kind of curious for me, having been on the project for a long time, to see how all these different aesthetics abilities came together, but it was rather wonderful. So just sort of going back into theory head after being in art head, so the impact of progression, which I'm really bad at measuring, and I really could, and I really will, was that, again, the things that a lot of people, particularly I'm thinking about Rob's feedback on his carers, about confidence, self-worth, communication and connection, vocational and transferable skills, and that progression into education and employment. And just in shorthand, really, Lincolnshire Recovery Partnership will say the atmosphere in each session was electric. A prisoner will say, this is the first time I felt capable of doing something positive for my future. One of our students said, it's the best measure I've ever had. It's changed my life. And what's actually happened from these things is that we have had, and my colleagues know this, so we've got clients that come on and then study on the foundation and fine art degree. And we have students that have then gone and volunteered at the different places and got jobs. So that's kind of a real world awesome thing. Complexities, challenges, millions of them. I worry about getting a phone call that something's happened, you know, and a very silly thing sort of that happened was one prisoner cut all the hair off a mannequin's model in the States when I wasn't in the room. And it's like, you get these phone calls and you're like, how's that find somebody? How do we and Rob will know, signing off the risk assessments, we were like, how many lines can we put in there? And Swallow Lodge, who lost the commissioning or are struggling with it, really was talking about trust being essential, and short-term interventions do last, but they need support. Those are some of the areas that my research and dissemination has gone into. I have also worked on sort of metaphor stuff with colleagues that are scientists on those 2 last funded projects. One was head of pharmacy here, she's now at Sheffield. And in fact, I worked with her also at De Montfort on a domestic recovery project. So I'm sort of returning to that, as well as other funded projects that have been much more about community in arts-based research, which enhance wellbeing, much like Rob was showing at Doddington, and working with the arts in those settings, less in the sort of more clinical settings, but I'm interested in how those intersect. So future direction wise, that's what I'm interested in. There's still a lot there, probably need to hone it down, but I'm really curious at the moment about almost not the impact of the social prescribing on those that are being social prescribed to, but the impact the other way. So how it's affecting our students, how it's affecting those that are working in the service. So again, it's sort of caring for the carers or caring for the researchers. That way, that was supposed to whiz around that little thing, but it's not. It just usually whiz around, but it's about the intersection between client, educator, artist, and community, and how all of those roles bleed into each other and change each person as it sort of goes around iteration and iteration. So I'm interested in that interplay. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.